Welcome to the Homeschool High School podcast, brought to you by Seven Sisters Homeschool.com and Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. I'm Vicki, and I am so excited to have my friend and cousin, Cheryl Carter, on the podcast again. So, Cheryl, we have known each other in the digital sphere for a while
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
And as most of you guys know, our Seven Sisters has a group of our very best friends who have a kindred spirit with us, who we call cousins, and we share resources and expertise back and forth. So Cheryl's one of our cousins, and Cheryl has started a wonderful, wonderful resource called the Capable Scholar that I want to talk about today. That is just absolutely marvelous opportunity for our learning different kids.
hmm
But first, Cheryl, introduce yourself, and for our new listeners, tell them about you and your homeschool journey and your interesting life.
Okay. Interesting. So I have 5 kids. I've been married 37 recently, like as a few weeks ago, 37 years.
Awesome.
And so my older kids, we call them now Family A and Family B, were homeschooled all the way through. So my son has a PhD now. My daughter has a MFA and is a
Mm,
learning specialist, and my other one is in graduate school, would have been youngest. And then we have 13-year-old twins
mm.
who we are homeschooling, and they are doing fantastic. So, okay, for some reason, oh, do you still see me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, for some reason, my computer went blank. Okay. Um, so, so we've been homeschooling for a while, and one of the things that I found with homeschooling, to kind of just jump in, I'm a college professor so I teach college part time,
Uh-huh.
and I've done English, and I've done writing curriculum. And over the years, I've worked with struggling students. People usually came to me because of my special education background, is when their
Mm-hmm.
students had problems. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's pretty much what I've done for
Mm-hmm.
the most part. And so my company, the Capable Scholar, is me just taking the time to look at the needs of those needs of
Mm-hmm.
those students to get into
Mm-hmm.
college, to
Yeah.
write well. And actually, we
Mm-hmm.
even have a component, by the way, of the Capable Scholar, of students who want to get published.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because one of the unique ways, I'm probably jumping in ahead of time, but anyway,
No, you're good.
one of the unique ways I teach grammar,
Yeah.
particularly with our students with learning differences, is they
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily do well with worksheets and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take their writing
Mm-hmm.
and you teach them grammar using their writing, they do fantastic. And
Yeah.
I have a publishing component also. So for those students who want to write books,
Oh.
and want to get published, and when I say published, like published articles and things like that. So some students, even we build a portfolio for them with college by
Mm-hmm.
getting published. But uh, primarily, like I said, I work with neurodiverse,
Mm-hmm.
disabled, just struggling. Your student doesn't necessarily have to have a IEP. So those
Right.
people who might be thinking like, well, I don't have an IEP, or my child doesn't have a diagnosis. But if you're like me, even as a parent, you look and you say, I know there's something
Mm-hmm.
not right. I can't
Mm-hmm.
can't put my finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
I had one parent said, it's not dyslexia. Um, it's not it's not visual, but it's something.
Yeah.
And the child had more like hearing. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to diagnose your child, but
Mm-hmm.
when you come to me and just say they're struggling, you don't have to give me a diagnosis. Just tell me they're struggling. I can help you find the best the best way to approach writing.
Mm-hmm.
The best way, even when I look at the approach math, so it's doing some visual parts of the with the math,
Mm-hmm.
and to help your student know that they're a scholar and they're capable of doing almost anything.
Well, that's the thing that makes my heart very glad, is just the name of the website is the Capable Scholar. And sometimes young people who have some struggles see themselves as defective and incapable. So
Mhm.
if they are learning in a platform that says that they are capable scholars, that says somebody believes in them,
Right, right, right.
and that they can learn in this format where they are already believed in and learn to believe in themselves. And
Mhm.
when you get a young person believing in themselves, they can go, okay, then the world is not shut down to me, the world is open to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm so excited about that. Now your other platform is collegiate learning.
Right. Well, the
So
collegiate learning started, if you look, so
uh,
my books are in the name collegiate learning too.
yes,
So some people will say, wait a minute, are you Cheryl Carter? Or are you collegiate learning? I'm both. So if you see
I'm those,
collegiate
yes.
learning, so right. So collegiate learning, I do have books and materials that will set out,
Hmm.
even for young kids,
Hmm.
that will help them be successful in college. But
Right.
if you look at all my materials, somebody
Hmm.
once said to me, this is like a dummy's book for kids who want to get in college. And she meant it as a compliment. I said, yeah, I try to make it as simple as possible
Right.
so that our kids can be successful. And even moms,
Yes.
sometimes we get overwhelmed. If you have a book that it might be based on evidence based, but if it's 5,000
Mm.
pages, you're
Yeah.
thinking, how can I make it through?
Yeah.
So I try to, even if I have a book that's thick, I give just the basic relevant
Hmm.
information so you can
Hmm.
pick it up as a busy homeschooling mom who has more than one kid, who
Yeah.
has a child who has need, and I
Hmm.
understand that.
Yeah.
Sometimes what moms don't understand is that I've heard people say, well, just give them the book and let them go and do it. Well, some of our kids who have those kind of struggles, they're not
Hmm.
necessarily, they're not going to do it. They're going to sit, and sometimes they're not going to come and tell you. You find out
Right.
that they had to struggle once they didn't do the work.
Right.
So I try to put all my materials have a minimum of teacher preparation. You really,
Hmm.
not to say, you could pretty pick it up and read through and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and it's evidence based. So there's been research done that these are the most effective ways.
Hmm.
So it's good material.
Yeah, so
So
parents can have confidence, and students can learn. And so rather than being stuck
right.
and not believe in themselves, they can learn and learn that they can learn. So, all
Mhm.
right, so let's say I had like a 13-year-old or 14-year-old. So they're getting ready for ninth grade. They're facing high school, and they're going like, oh, I can't do any of this stuff. But they probably should take on some writing projects,
Mhm.
um, and so especially as they are thinking forward in the future, what would a mom do if they contacted the capable scholar? What kind of resources would they find?
Okay, so moms who are listening, you might want to. This is a good time to grab a pen because else
Uh-huh.
you're going to rewind. Because people tell me I go back and listen.
Yeah.
So, so first to understand that sometimes by the time they're in the ninth grade, if they've struggled, they're going to the ninth grade.
Hmm.
If they've struggled, they probably don't. Even if they're in homeschool, they probably don't have a good view of themselves.
Hmm.
So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that whatever you're using, whether you
Hmm.
use my curriculum, of course I want you to use mine, but I'm just being
Hmm.
candid. Whatever you
Yeah.
use, seriously, make sure that it's done, that it's something that they can see success in small
Hmm.
increments as they go along.
Hmm.
That's the first thing I would say.
Hmm.
The second thing I would say is that a lot of college material, particularly beginning college material and high school, is the same. So if I can
Hmm.
even go back in history a little bit, and this might be a little controversial for some, but anyway, so if we look back in history of the education
Hmm.
of public education,
Hmm.
originally students graduated. We only went up to the eighth grade,
Hmm.
and so students would graduate. But if you look at a competency exam for the eighth grade, it is what a high school doing. Some of our high schoolers can't even do that, by the way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so sometimes what we're doing is with our kids who are struggling, so I'm going to say struggling learners, and it
Hmm.
just would be the umbrella for the, we
Hmm.
frustrate them when we kind of keep going over things that maybe they didn't necessarily master. They
Hmm.
may never master, in all honesty, but
Hmm.
we have to know where what God is calling them to do,
Yeah.
and give them just enough. So one of the things, the first thing I would say is to rest on, it's not a lot that they really have to do in high school. And I know some people are like, but you're college prep. But so
But being real and practical,
yeah,
yes.
it's not. So if you look at, for instance, like I have and now I'll post it, but like just a grammar review. That's the only grammar they really need.
Hmm.
Now that's not to say some students don't go and I have my daughters and they like, one of them was like a grammar geek and she would go in and diagram the sentences and all that, but she didn't have she didn't struggle. That was at least
Mhm.
not in that area.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but first I would say, like, let's narrow it down. They only need English. So if you get my writing book actually goes from 6th grade to 12th grade. So if they
Mhm.
do all that, and it goes beyond 12th grade, it ends with the first year of college. So
Mm.
I have them doing a literary analysis paper, a college
Mhm.
research paper. That's
Mhm.
the final thing to do. But
Mhm.
if you look at it, it's not a lot. So
Mhm.
so you want to say they have to do English, they have to do math, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
tell you something. If you get a college algebra book
Mhm.
for some of the kids, particularly, get a college remedial algebra book.
Mhm.
Um, and so am I allowed to say the book, or am I
Oh,
endorsing?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. We're
Oh,
not
okay.
affiliates. We're not obligated to
Okay.
anybody, so we're
Okay.
good.
All right. Okay. So one of the books that I use with some of my students is the Martha Leal book, and you don't need the current one. You actually get the old
Uh-huh.
the older
Uh-huh.
edition. So like you
Mm.
could go in any of those used or thrift bookstores and
Uh-huh.
get it. And I've done this with, and when I say my kids, by the way, I should probably say this because people say, "How many kids do you have?" I call anybody who works with me because I have an affection and an affinity. I call them my kids. So I'll
Yeah.
say kids with the last name Carter if I'm referring
Yeah.
to biological kids. Um, I should say biological or adoptive. Um, so um, so if you get that book, that's just one.
Mhm.
Life with Fred is also another good book. Again,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not in there's a few other things. So if they could email me, and I have like a list. I have a
Oh,
list that I'll
okay.
give. It's not a big deal. The
Okay.
list is free. And so that's the math. So if you do the college algebra,
Mhm.
they're going to cover all the algebra they need to cover.
Mm.
And by the time they go to college, they're ready to go to
Mhm.
college, they would have covered it. So you have English, math, history. History, we
Mhm.
keep repeating it. You get a good CLEP history.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
they could do free CLEP at Modern States.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, or look
Mhm.
at Seven Sisters have. I'm not just saying that.
Uh-huh.
I really have said to people, the Seven Sisters have really good resources. They have
Mhm.
really good resources, by the way.
We're partial there, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, well, I'm being candid.
yeah,
I'm being honest.
but
I do.
yeah, CLEP is a brilliant idea
Yeah.
too for young
So
people.
right. And so struggling because it's not as invasive. And by the way,
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to stay on track, but a CLEP exam, if you're doing a homeschool transcript for struggling learners,
Mhm.
is easier way to validate learning than an AP or ACT or SAT. Because particularly if you have students who have anxiety, and a lot of times the kids we work with, and I say
Mhm.
we because I have other teachers who work with me,
Yeah, yeah.
they have anxiety. So a long exam like an ACT or SAT, it's
Mhm.
just too much for them. The
Mhm.
CLEP is so short, 90
Mhm.
minutes. Computer,
Mhm.
it's and so they could do and they could take it over, so they could study it and
Yeah.
just take it over if need be. But
Mhm.
anyway, so you have the and the science is the same thing. You pick one of them. One of the sciences. It could be biology. I like biology, so I start with
Mhm.
biology. But you do
Mhm.
chemistry or
Mhm.
any of those CLEP.
Mhm.
So if you start with those four, and then you just work with the basics of it,
Mhm.
they would
Mhm.
do. Now I'm going to say this. Um, I'm kind of careful when I say this. I don't want to
You
offend.
good.
But I've had students come to me and they try these online courses where they have to do it every day. And
Mhm.
I'm just saying, for some struggling students, for students who are struggling to
Mhm.
remember these online courses, particularly the automated ones, they don't work. If one thing, if they have a live teacher,
A live teacher, yeah. Uh-huh.
it's really
Mhm.
good. But I'm just saying,
Mhm.
sometimes if I tell you the number, and not even even one young lady came to me, very
Mhm.
very smart. She and her sister now are at the University of Delaware, actually.
Ah.
Yeah, and she came to me and she said, Miss Cheryl, that's what they call me. Miss Cheryl, she said, I'm gonna take my AP tomorrow, but I've never she was taking, and I won't say the name of the company, but she was taking these AP thing, and she said, but I've never really gotten enough feedback on my paper. So I was like, okay. And she was taking the
Uh,
exam next week, and she called me last minute. So we
uh-huh.
worked like almost every day, giving her back
Uh-huh.
and forth and showing her, giving her feedback.
Mm.
And she, by the way, ultimately did pass. She probably could have got a higher grade
Uh-huh.
if she would have started working early. So I'm just saying, like, if you have a struggling learner, you
Mhm.
can't do everything that everybody else might say that they do with their kids. You,
Right.
you need something that's hands-on.
Mhm.
And by the way, even if your kid, I'm sorry, did I start? Even if
Yeah,
your
no, you're
kid,
good.
even if your child hasn't mastered something,
Mhm.
it's not too late. So one of the things that I also do is I work with a program. I noticed that some of my kids come in and they've been particularly dyslexic ones, they've been
Mhm.
exposed to all these different functions, but they really haven't
Mhm.
mastered it. But even if they're not dyslexic, sometimes they haven't mastered it. There's some really good programs. So one of the other programs I use with it, you could work with one of my teachers, is the rewards program. I don't mind if you work with me. I
Mhm.
don't mind saying it. So
Mhm.
if you don't want to work with me, you just want to get it, that's fine.
Mhm.
But it helps older kids master phonics. When I say older kids, by the
Mm.
time they get in high school, and it's really good because it's a short-term program. So I believe it
Mhm.
was we make it a little shorter. I believe it's
Mhm.
12 weeks, but I went in, I
Mm.
made it shorter. But like, so I had one of the kids come to me and they said to me, they were working with it this summer, a few weeks ago, and one of the kids came to me and they said, Miss Cheryl, um, when I was working with my mom used to, when I came to a word I didn't know, my mom used to say, sound it out. And she said, I never knew how to sound it out. I really didn't. She
Uh-huh.
said, I knew all the rules, but I didn't know what to do. But she said, when I went to
Yeah.
this program and you explained, you look at the prefixes and then you look at the suffixes and then
Uh-huh.
you go to the sounds and the root word. She said, so I know I have a way of doing it. And so now, like, mom's so
Oh.
excited that she's reading it. Sometimes
Oh.
this is a
Mhm.
good time when your kids are going to high school, by the way, to fill in
Mhm.
those gaps.
Mhm.
It's a good time to fill in those gaps
Mhm.
and to look at it. So I would say start out with 4 programs. Look, make sure that your kid could read and
Mhm.
that they can do math. And reading, by the way, like I said, make sure that it's phonics. And some of you, I know, by the time your kids get to high school, you're like, I don't
Mhm.
want phonics. They should know how to read. I know what they should know, but I'm telling you, just take the time to do it.
Right, because
Take
if
the
they're missing it, it's gonna hold them back, and it's gonna tank their confidence. So
yeah,
just, yeah, give them what they need.
yeah,
So if we had a mom who wanted to connect with some of your resources, because you have writing, you've got out-school classes you connect
yeah,
them
yeah,
to,
yeah.
you work with the families, with the students, like, so tell
Mhm.
us a little bit, so if someone goes to this thecapable scholar.com, what will they find?
Well, they're gonna find they'll see links to my writing curriculum, actually in
Mhm,
the curriculum period. Most of them are on
mhm,
Amazon just because I
mhm.
don't have the time to mail them all out and all
Right,
keep them.
right.
Um, I do work for Study Point in terms of the college thing.
Mhm,
So it's studypoint.com.
mhm,
If you wanted to like contact me, if you wanted to work with, and you could just say, I want to work with Professor Cheryl Carter. That's what
uh-huh.
that's my professional name, Professor
There you
Cheryl
go.
Carter.
There you go.
And we could do that. But if you even just want to work with me in any kind of way, you can just email me. And I do have an assistant now. So
Mhm.
I was trying to answer all my email and
Uh,
it didn't
Not
work.
working,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have an assistant now who will answer the email and she
Mhm.
responds. And she's a homeschooling mom
Ah,
and her
nice.
kids, she's the same thing. Her kids, she runs the gamut. She has young to old. And
Mm,
so they could just email me through the Capable Scholar and they can get the
yeah.
information. And also when you on the what I'm also attempting to do just from a ethical basis, like I try to put as many things on there for free. So if you go through, like you'll scroll
Mhm.
through, you'll see, like I'll have up the this I should do in high school. So you should see you'll see those resources,
Yep.
study things.
Mhm,
You'll see a review of the grammar.
mhm,
So as many things that I can. I don't call
mhm.
them blogs because the
Yeah,
information doesn't change. So, but if you
right.
look, it says articles. You could
Yeah,
scroll through and
yeah.
see the articles that I have there.
Yeah, there's some very helpful articles there on the site. So, yeah, so I'll have links in the show notes to the Capable Scholar. So, for our young people who need to know they can have success, this is just another, it's another new resource that just got me really excited.
Mhm.
Especially this is one of our cousins, so it just makes me this.
So.
So,
uh,
any other things you want to share?
Yeah, I think most of the time, if I'm really can, and if you think
Mhm,
about it, our kids, and we do that to ourselves.
mhm,
We put limitations on ourselves. We
mhm,
sometimes we got to watch what we say. Sometimes you don't even know what you're saying to yourself
mhm,
until you take the time to hear yourself. When I'm
mhm.
working with somebody and somebody says, "Oh, I'm always so stupid." No, you're not stupid. And don't say it. And even when you say it, and they'll say, "I'm just saying as a jest." I'm not.
Yeah.
It's not. You are. That's going in your head.
Yeah. Yep.
Students, when they don't get something, and kids, because they're developing, they don't say
Mhm.
it's something wrong with the book or
Mhm.
something wrong with the approach. They think it's something wrong with them.
Exactly. Yes.
And God didn't make mistakes. When He
Yeah.
created us, He created all of us different. We all have
Mhm.
different strengths. We all have weaknesses. And
Mhm.
so the most important thing that I do is work to get the kid to believe in themselves. And so I'll
Yeah.
start really small.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I think I shared on one of the other previous podcasts, like I had somebody coming in and he had said, well, I'm just not a good writer. I'm going to come with you because my mother told me to
Mhm.
take class with
Mhm.
you. I'm not a good writer. So I said, yes, you are. So I said, I did ask, and by the way, any parent could do this. I,
Mhm.
I, I asked him a question and he told me the answer and I had wrote down and I said, but this is what you just told me. And he said,
Uh-huh.
oh, I said, so you wrote it. So I said, really? I said, because writing is just thinking on paper. I said, we
Mhm.
all think. So
Mhm.
it's giving the students little, building their success up.
Yes. Yes.
And not also parents, like you're not in competition with the public school. You're not in competition with this with the other homeschooler down the street.
Yes.
And if the truth is told, everybody's
Yes.
struggling. Sometimes, I have to be careful with social media. I've been guilty of like you go on and they're like, oh, like I said, my son recently got his PhD. I went and was bragging about, oh, he got his PhD. What I didn't tell you is like all the struggles I had when we were homeschooling. You
Yeah,
know,
we only get the Pinterest version of
right,
things.
right,
Yes.
right. Yeah. And so even other people that you look at, you just don't
Mhm.
you don't
Mhm.
know. And so
Mhm.
it's really important that we find something and we build up those small points. One other
Yeah.
practical thing I know just to help in terms of building a student up,
Yeah.
sometimes having a checklist to see what they're supposed to do, not just getting a textbook, getting through the textbook, but with our
Yeah.
struggling student is one of the things that I work with is I work with
Mhm.
a checklist and I'll say, so even a very young student, does the
Mhm.
student know the numbers? Can the
Mhm.
students correspond the numbers together? Because sometimes a
Mhm.
parent will come to me and say, they don't know how to do addition. They really don't know how to do addition. And you have to go back to see, okay, where did they get stuck?
Yeah. Mhm.
Where did they
Mhm.
get stuck? And like one of the things I do with my kids, I'm talking about all my kids.
Uh,
So it was interesting, and so the parent has told me is one of the parents approached me a few years ago, and she said, "My son wants to take the AP in macroeconomics and microeconomics."
Woo.
And so she said, "Can he come to you because I figured you're a professor." And people don't they think because I'm a professor I know everything, but I don't. So I didn't wanna say no to her, just I didn't wanna
Uh-huh.
say no to her. So anyway, she said to me, "I knew nothing about economics." I took the book and all that, but when he came to me, I said and I won't say his name, but I said, uh, "Charlie," I said, "Charlie, I can look at it and see what he got wrong." I said, "You got this one wrong. Why'd you get that one wrong?" And then he said, "Well," I said, "Nope, you gotta tell me why you got it wrong. When did you stop understanding?" And he would talk himself through each
Exactly.
question that he got
Yeah.
right, and he passed with I don't know if you're aware, he passed with a 5, a 5.
Oh.
And
Oh.
I still know nothing about macro or
Yeah.
microeconomics, but he did, and his mother goes, "You're so great." I tell you, I said, "Please don't send me anybody because I had all this stress." And by the way, she didn't it was more ministry, so this so anybody
Yeah.
wondered, she didn't pay me for it because I really didn't know.
Yeah.
But my point is, one of the things also when I have kids do learning journals is I always ask them, "When did I stop understanding?" Because
Yeah.
as you go through that, you could figure out even as an adult,
Mhm.
if you don't
Mhm.
get something you're trying to learn, you ask yourself, "What do I know?"
Mhm.
And then you say, "When did I stop understanding?" And you could pinpoint the exact point of when you need to get to the next step.
You know what, Cheryl? That question, I love a good question. It clarifies what went wrong. When did I stop understanding?
Mhm.
All right, so people, so now you know why I get a kick out of being part of Cheryl's life here, because I always get an inspiration when I hear
Oh,
her
thank
talk.
you.
So anyway, everybody, if you've got a student who hasn't learned to believe in themselves yet, if they're struggling, go look at the Capable Scholar and check out Cheryl's resources there. So all right. I'm
And
going to put
don't
links.
limit them. I'm sorry, one thing, and
Yeah.
don't limit them. I had a student I
Uh-huh.
just gotta tell you real quick. I had a student, um, came to me to study. The mom's like, he's not going to do well, but he needed to take the ACT. I
Uh-huh.
actually, he got the highest score on his reading and writing on the ACT, the highest score
Uh,
possible. And
uh-huh.
why? Because we used his own words. And he ended up
Uh-huh.
writing a book. So just so you know, the Capable Scholar also, we have a publication. I forgot to say that. So we
Uh,
published and we help capable scholars get published.
that's
So
precious. So
yeah,
he learned to believe in himself. He didn't know
right,
before. And
right.
that's like at the root is God didn't make mistakes. The
Right.
teens just need to learn who God made them to be. So this is part of that. And I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll put links to the Capable Scholar and all of Cheryl's resources in the show notes. So, well, this has been the Homeschool High School podcast brought to you by Seven Sisters Homeschool.com and the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. And thank you, Cheryl, for being here. And thank you,
Thank
Seth
you.
Tillman, for editing. And we'll see everybody next week.
All right. Thank you, everyone.